Welcome Board Wizards, Commander Vizardrix here, and today we're going to be looking at a rework of my Mono White Eldrazi deck. The original deck used Kodaki, is a 2-drop, 2/1 with all artifacts have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 1. The original theme behind the deck was using White's Guilt, its inability to ramp unless people have more lands than you, to its fullest advantage. We did this by shutting off our opponent's mana rocks, sacrificing our own lands in order to ramp using things like land tax, and then sacrificing our own artifacts in order to draw cards and create card advantage. Now the deck was absolute torture for our opponents, so it succeeded in that aspect. The issue, however, is that as soon as my pod figured out that spot removal exists, they stacked their decks with them. The problem here being that our average CMC was higher than 7, and for Mono White that type of investment was just too one-sided. Our opponents would, for 1 to 2 mana, completely erase an entire turn for us. Originally, my pod didn't play a lot of spot removal, so the deck functioned as intended in that regard, but as soon as they started to play more spot removal, it just couldn't keep up with that power creep. So we reworked it. We're now using Mavinda Student's Advocate. Mavinda says, pay 0. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell doesn't target a creature you control, it costs 8 more to cast this way. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. The general goal here is going to be to use cantrips to create card advantage or protection. Cards such as Shelter, which will do both, target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn, and then you get to draw a card. Cards like Valorous Stance, which we can use originally for spot removal and then recur later on to protect a creature of our choice, and or protect 2 creatures for the cost of 1 spell. Additionally, because we no longer have the artifact restriction, I put some mana rocks into the deck because it is still very mana hungry. I also added the 1 ring for additional card draw, and cards like Smuggler's Share and Smothering Tithe for treasure token. Smuggler's Share is also pretty great because it gives us additional card draw. Additionally, we reworked some additional protection into the deck, things like Sarah's Emissary. Sarah's Emissary says when it enters the battlefield, choose a card type. You and creatures you control have protection from the chosen type. That's going to include creatures, artifacts, enchantments, instants, sorceries, etc. It's a good tool for both defense and game ending. Chroma's Will is going to do similar things. In the early game, I will only use it for protection, and once we get past turn 10 or so, I will use it to clean up a game. And then obviously we're going to add Avacyn. Mommy always has a place in Mono White decks. Additionally, I added Aerial Extortionist, additional card draw, removal. When Aerial Extortionist enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you draw a card. This is going to include commanders. Generally, Aerial Extortionist may only remove something for 1 turn, but it is going to create a resource sink for your opponents, and it's generally just pretty good card draw. Battle Angels of Tyr, more options for treasure tokens, more options for card draw, and in the worst case scenario, a decent life gain option. And then my favorite new addition, Planar Birth. It was supposed to be in the original deck, but somehow it got lost in my notes. Planar Birth says, put all basic lands from all graveyards into play under their owner's control, tapped. For 2 mana, we basically get to put all the basics we've been sacrificing to try to play catch up right back into play. The downside being that since it is still a white card, it has white guilt, and all of your opponents get to do the same. We did keep the general theme for mana ramp. The sacrifice lands such as Scorched Ruins and Lotus Field in combination with cards like Land Tax, which are going to allow us to search our library for lands if we're behind. And then I did keep the Titans, as well as the general dickhead Eldrazi. The new rework is going to be available in the comments section down below. If for any reason it doesn't attach to the video, which it hasn't for some time. Unfortunately, the cost of the deck has gone up quite a bit. It is no longer as budget friendly as I normally prefer. However, it is substantially more powerful than it was originally and is capable of keeping up with even some higher power commanders. It is still a casual deck though, so don't expect to take this into a CDH game and be able to do anything but pass turn. Thank you for watching, and as always, have an amazing day.